This video is, as a lot of my videos are, a response to what I'm doing in my actual day-to-day work. And I've been asked to make an 18th century, mid-18th century waistcoat, and it involves hand sewing it. So I've hand sewn the lining into this. But it also, it threw up a thing that I'd never really considered doing before, which is a hand sewn pocket opening. So I thought I would share that with you today. Thought you'd like to join me on working out how to make this pocket. So this is the front of my waistcoat. The outside, that's the wrong side, this is the right side, and I've marked on it the pocket opening, and I've drawn a line across. It's quite faint, but it's drawn across. I'll show you a bit closer in a moment. And then I've also got the two pocket bags, which I've cut out of a linen, and all I've done with those is I've pressed over about 1/2 inch on the top edge. Done a little bit more on that side. It's just to straighten it up because it was cut slightly off grain. So I've got the two pocket bags and my waistcoat front and the hole where I'm going to cut marked. And then also I've got a pocket flap, but I'll come to the pocket flap later when I'm about to pop that on. What you do need to know though, I guess, with your pocket flap, or think about, is how wide your pocket flap is, and make sure that your pocket opening is narrower than your pocket flap. Okay. The beauty of using broadcloth is that it is a really densely woven fabric, which means that you cut it and there is no fraying at all. So you can leave it raw edged. However, you can't do that with the linen, hence why I've pressed it over. The first thing that you're going to do is cut through the opening. So make sure that you've got really nice sharp shears. And I wouldn't start at an end. I would start in the middle somewhere and just snip. And then you can cut the length like that. Okay. And then turn it over, so you're looking at the wrong side of your fabric, and I know this is the wrong side because I've got chalk markings over it. And then I'm going to lay my pocket bag up against the pocket mouth, but I'm just offsetting it slightly so that you end up with just a little bit of the red showing above the linen. Okay, so I'm just going to pin that in place. And then take the other pocket bag. The thing I'm going to do with this, first of all, I'm just going to trim that seam out so that it is even. And then I'm going to pin that in the same place and using the same method, allowing for a little bit of the red to show. And just pin it in place. Okay. And then I'm going to thread my needle with thread that matches the fabric on the outside of my waistcoat, of my pocket. And I'm going to do it double thread just because I want a bit of strength. It's just a cotton thread, it's Gutterman thread. And what I want to do is just going to come up through the pocket bag to begin with, near to the opening of the pocket mouth. Okay. And then I'm just going to whip stitch or over stitch the opening, so to sew the two pieces together. And I'm using quite small stitches. Make sure you pull it nice and tight each time you do a stitch. Okay, and what you should end up with is tiny little stitches holding those two together. And just work along until you get to the other end. Okay, and when you get to the other end of the opening, you're just going to tie a knot, tuck your end in, and cut the thread. I'll get rid of the pins, and then you'll see that I've just hemmed that edge. Okay, and that's my bottom pocket bag. And then what I'm going to do is, the next step is to do exactly the same for the top one. Okay, so the reason I'm using double thread is so that it creates a bit of strength on that edge. If you consider that somebody's going to put their hand in and out of that pocket multiple times, you don't want them to gradually wear that thread away. It will eventually, obviously, whether you've got single or double thread, but you just want to reduce that happening sooner than rather than later. So okay, when you get to the other end, I'm going to tie a knot, but I'm not going to cut my thread yet, and I'll explain why in a second. So this, get rid of these pins. So this is the right way up. Okay, so what I'm going to do is then fold that down, and then we're going to press it, and then I'm going to herringbone along there. But for the minute, I'm just going to pop the pins back in just to hold it in place. And then I'm going to take my needle and thread and just do a couple of stitches at the edge of the pocket mouth, just in the broadcloth for the moment. Just going to give it a little bit more strength, basically. And then I'm going to go push it back through, and it'll probably come through. Yeah, let's bring it through there and tie it off and trim my thread. Okay, so just pressed across the top there. I'm going to trim these so that they're the same length, and then I'm going to sew the pocket bag, and I'm going to do that by machine, just because I don't trust my hand sewing being strong enough to actually cope with the force of somebody putting their hand in the pocket. So I've sewn my pocket bag. Take the pins out now, and then I'm just going to herringbone across the top just to hold it in place. And I'm not going all the way through the red broadcloth at the moment. I'm just catching, because it's so dense, you can just catch a few threads. And that just holds the pocket bag in place. Okay, and then we have our pocket bag in our pocket. The next step is to get our pocket flap. Now, to attach this, I'm going to just stab stitch it, but what I want to do is fold the top edge over like that. Now I've pressed it, but because broadcloth is so thick and springy, it doesn't stay folded over. So I'm just going to run a stitch across there just to hold it in place to begin with, and then I can easily stab stitch it to the coat afterwards. If you want to, you could just baste it down. I'm kind of doing a basting in the fact that I'm just holding it in place, just with a very simple whip stitch, and that means that it'll just, because I'm using the right colour thread, it won't be seen. I'm not going all the way through the pocket flap. I'm just catching up half of it, or a smaller thickness of it, just to hold it. And then once that's done, you can lay your pocket flap over your pocket mouth and get it into place, and then we're going to just stab stitch through there. So I've pinned it in place. Make sure that underneath your pocket bag is down and out of the way. If you want to, just pop a pin in just to make sure it stays down there. I've pinned it where it needs to sit, and then I'm going to stab stitch to hold it on. Okay, so I'm going to start this end, and I'm going to start down from the top. Okay, so I'm going to come up and then go across. Again, because you've got somebody putting their hand into the pocket and you don't know how brutal they're going to be with that, you need to make sure there's strength on the corners and not just across the top. I call this stab stitch, but you might want to also call it a top stitch. And in actual fact, thinking about what I'm doing, I am stabbing it, but I'm also going to go in reverse. So each time I come through, I'm going to come back on myself with the stitch rather than just carry straight on. So I come up through, and then I come back to the direction that I was working, only by 2 millimeters. You just end up with these little stab stitches. And the stabs are, I would say, about 2/8 of an inch apart. I'm just going to do some stitches coming down the side of the pocket flap, just so that it gives it a little bit of strength. And that is my waistcoat pocket. Okay, hope you've enjoyed watching. If you have, thank you very much. Glad to hear it, and please like and subscribe to my channel. Thank you. Happy sewing.